Hello and welcome to IH Talks. I'm Christopher Walker from International House Bielsko-Biała, and today we're talking about using games for control practice with John Shaw. The general subject of this talk is going to be some of the different games that John has created or created in collaboration with his own students. So over to you, John.
Hi, I'm John Shaw and I work at IH Reggio Calabria in Italy. And today we're going to talk about games for control practice. So basically, this is an article I wrote for the IH Journal recently. And it was a bit of my journey on how I moved from a novice teacher who didn't have much theoretical knowledge and how I adapted over the years and actually put theory behind the games.
Oh, right, that's great. So there's actually a kind of theoretical driving force behind the sort of games that you've been playing with your students then.
There is. It's just I didn't know it at the time, especially at the beginning. It kind of worked out reverse.
Yeah. Well, that's fine, isn't it? As you know, it's always nice to discover later that there's a reason that you're doing things and that the reason justifies what you've been up to.
So the first games I was using, well, actually before then, I was just using techniques that teacher trainers had told me. Like instead of just asking A, what's the answer, B's what's the answer? Of course, first nominating people randomly and getting people to nominate other people, like standard ideas like that. Putting the answers on the wall so they had to discuss together and then walk around and find the answers, and sometimes fast finishers, writing the answers on the board, just simple techniques to make it more interactive. Then I started using reward games. One example was having a dartboard on the board, like drawing it with markers. And if you got an answer correct, or if you attempted to get an answer correct, depending on the purpose, they'd get to throw the ball at the target. And there were pluses and negatives. And then it kind of moved on to some things more ambitious, like dodgeball and basketball. So that's how it started. Then later on, I realized that it took a lot of effort making new games all the time. And I found one very popular game called Guns, Bombs, and Hearts. Some people call it Guns, Bombs, and Angels, but it's the same thing. You've got a grid and you have a key. And when somebody gets an answer correct, they get to choose like A1 or B3. And behind each square, there's a reward or a punishment. Of course, this game can be adapted for younger ones where it's only rewards, just in case they get confused why they're losing points. And this game was a hit with pretty much all my classes, young learners and adults. But as with all games, people get bored of them over time. It's not as special anymore. So what I ended up doing usually was finding new games. But again, as I mentioned, it takes a lot of time. So I actually did some research and I found something called the Hawthorne effect. And this was a study in factories, like they increased the brightness of the lights by 20% and workers' productivity improved. However, the catch was, after a while, this increased productivity would return to normal. So I thought, okay, I can always do little twists in this game, but I keep needing to change every few weeks. For example, they will get double points on some squares or triple points. And then I would add different things like a tornado that would take away all their points. Or if they're on negative points, I'd add a tree, which would give them lives back. And at one point, like a nuclear bomb, that would end the game and we'd have to start again.
Oh my goodness.
Over months, we got to continue this game and it still felt fresh for them. Then I kind of realized the importance of functional language, especially when I was doing courses like IHCYLT and CAM. And a lot of these games, I was just using it because it was fun, but I realized then you can actually have a lot of good functional language like, oh no, or well done, or haha, we'll get revenge, or you hit me. So for every single game, you can come up with your unique vocabulary. And if you know the L1 and the kids are spontaneously saying stuff in their language, you can make a note of it and pre-teach it before you play it again. which
Oh,
was
that's
useful.
good. Yeah, I like that. So you're taking notes of what the students are actually saying because they have a reason for wanting to say, haven't they? They're motivated to say something. But like you say, they kind of reach for L1 first of all.
Exactly. And after that, I took it one step further and started playing different sports like football, cricket, and introducing the rules and the functional language. So they got some cultural aspect as well. And I would advise any teacher like you to use their national sport or something they're interested in. I mean, I know a lot of teachers do Squid Game with their kids as well, since it's such a big hit. So that was the next stage. But the final stage was I took all these ideas that I picked up over the years. And when I was doing my Delta 1 in CAM, I started to understand the importance of student autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was teaching this young boy. I've been teaching him for actually 4 or 5 years, which is kind of strange, I realize now, because at the school I was at before, it was actually encouraged to keep the same students because they got attached to you. While in schools I worked on later, they usually have a practice of changing the teachers every 2 years because
Mm-hmm.
these kids need something fresh to keep them on their toes and not get attached to one person. So, but interestingly, teaching him for so long meant I ran out of ideas and I kept having to think of more things. And I got to the stage with like, okay, here's a cup, throw a ball in it. What rule would you like to add? And then he's like, I think you bounce it. And I'm like, oh, it would be a good idea if we bounced it. And then so I gave him the second conditional and some other forms he could use. And every lesson we would add a new rule, like ricocheting off the wall or closing your eyes, you get double points, throwing it behind your back. And over months and months, we came up with like we had to write it in a small book because we had so many rules and we had to check back to it. But I realized later on, it's like this is a great idea because it's student autonomy. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
be more interested in the game that they made themselves. It can be easily adaptable, and they're the ones making the adaptations. And it was a good learning experience for me, and it's something I've tried with other classes. And of course, when you've got a group rather than individual students, they can brainstorm, and it takes more time. And you, as a teacher, just need to guide them, error
Wow.
correct at the ends. And
Wow, that's fantastic. So if I can summarize then, basically, you introduced games as a way of varying the way that you were doing control practice. You noticed that the students were more engaged as a result. You started then getting further into the research of what's actually going on there, looking at ways to really capitalize on what's going on until eventually it became a massive part of student autonomy, a motivational factor for language use as well as for having fun. And basically everyone's a winner, if we could say that about using games.
yeah, definitely so.
Wow. So thank you so much, John, for your time today and for sharing these ideas with you. And this brings to an end our IH talk for today. Thank you.